Okay, to finish off this paper, Mr. madasq has given us a very nice variable acceleration question. So we know that the displacement is x and is moving with velocity v. We're given a formula for acceleration. Now, the formula for acceleration includes t, so I'm going to have to do this by integration. So we start by saying the velocity is going to be the integral of acceleration with respect to time. So I'm going to integrate 16 minus 6t, which gives me 16t minus 3t squared plus some sort of constant k. And I'm going to use the conditions that I've been given here. When t equals 1, v equals 1. So the velocity, given that t equals 1, equals 1. So I'm going to substitute my time of 1 second into this. So I can say that 16 times 1 minus 3 times 1 squared plus k should give me my value of 1. So 16 minus 3 is 13 plus k equals 1. Therefore k equals minus 12. And I'm going to rewrite my formula for the velocity now that I know what the value of k is. So the velocity is given by 16t minus 3t squared minus 12. Now I need to do exactly the same thing for its displacement. So x is going to be the integral of the velocity with respect to time. I'm going to integrate this, which gives me 8t squared minus t cubed minus 12t plus m, which is my new constant of integration. Again, I'm using my conditions of t equals 1, x equals minus 5. So x when t equals 1 equals minus 5. So therefore 8 lots of 1 squared minus 1 cubed minus 12 lots of 1 plus m equals minus 5. And that gives me 8 to take away 1, which is 7, minus 12 is minus 5, so minus 5 plus m equals minus 5. And that tells me that m is equal to 0. And again, I'm just going to rewrite my formula for x, so the displacement is going to be 8t squared minus t cubed minus 12t. Now, it says that the particle passes through O with speed u at different times when t equals t, and it wants us to find the possible values of u. So, if it's passing through the origin, that means that x equals 0. So x equals 0 implies that 8t squared minus t cubed minus 12t equals 0. I don't like this formulation because my highest power here is negative, and that's going to cause me problems when I want to factorise. So I'm going to bring everything over to the right hand side, and I've got t cubed minus 8t squared plus 12t equals 0. I can now factorise that. I can say 0 equals t lots of t squared minus 8t plus 12, and then I've got t lots of, well, I'm looking for two numbers which multiply together to give 12 and add together to give minus 8, should be minus 2 and minus 6. It's t lots of t minus 2, t minus 6 equals 0. So I now know that it passes through the origin, passes through O when t equals, well, either here, when this is 0, so t equals 0, or when this bracket is 0, so t equals 2, or when this bracket is 0, when t equals 6, when t equals 0, 2, and 6 seconds. Now, it wants us to find out what the speed is at those times. So we're going to go back to our velocity. So velocity when t equals 0. Here's my formula for my velocity. It's going to be 16 times 0 minus 3 times 0 squared minus 12, which is minus 12 meters per second. The velocity when t equals 2 is going to be 16 times 2 minus 3 times 2 squared minus 12. It's 32, minus 12 is 20, minus 12 is 8 meters per second. Velocity when t equals 6, 16 times 6 minus 3 times 6 squared minus 12. So, which gives me minus 24 meters per second. Now, let's just be careful, going to go back to the question there for a second. It says, find the possible values of u. Now, let's read the question carefully. T is greater than 0, u is a speed, not a velocity, so the two possible values are either here, where the speed is going to be 8 meters per second, or here, where the speed is going to be 24 meters per second. Be careful, it is not a negative, because it is a speed, not a velocity. The direction is discounted. So your answer's 8 meters per second and 24 meters per second. We're not including this 12 meters per second because it tells you that t is greater than 0.